श्रेयो हि ज्ञानमभ्यासात् ज्ञानाध्यानं विशिष्यते ध्यानात् कर्मफलत्यागः त्यागात् शान्तिरनन्तरम्.
Now in this verse he is summarizing. He says, for knowledge is superior to practice, meditation surpasses knowledge, renunciation of fruit of action is better than meditation, and peace instantly follows renunciation. Now he has deliberately put this in a confusing manner, and you might wonder, why is he confusing us? As it is, it's difficult enough, the philosophy. He puts it like this because he's understood that Arjuna is listening from chapter 1 onwards. We are listening from verse 1 onwards, and that too not verse 1. We are listening from 6 o'clock onwards. 6:30, sorry. So 6:30 to 7:30, 1 hour already your intellect, in a nice air-conditioned hall with lights dimmed a little bit. It's very conducive for sleep. So just to wake you up, he puts it in a confusing manner so that you say, "Arey, what is he saying?" That's why sometimes he changes the meter. The meter changes to the long meter when an important verse is coming. Because when the meter changes, you tend to wake up. But anyway, I hope you're all awake now. So what is he saying here? Whatever he's saying, he uses 4 terms. He says, abhyasa, practice. Jnanam, knowledge, is better than abhyasa. Dhyanam, meditation, is better than knowledge. And the best is renunciation of fruit. Why is he saying this? Because in the previous verse, in 11, he says, renounce the fruit of action. But you get confused. How is he saying renunciation of fruit is better than meditation? All this time he said meditation is the last practice. So let's take a look at what he's saying. There are 2 ways of interpreting this verse, from the material ordinary standpoint, relative standpoint, and from the absolute highest standpoint. From the material standpoint, abhyasa means action. Whatever action it is that you're performing, when you perform that action, mechanically it loses its vitality and power. But when you act, knowing fully well why you're acting, what purpose you are acting with, and what you hope to achieve with it, then it has power. So he says, jnanam, purpose, is better than just mechanical action. Then he says, consistency of action is more important in the sense consistency is what gets you the results. And karma phalatyagam is the best, means when you renounce the obsession for the fruit of action, which we've already seen in the last verse. You do what you have to do without worrying about what the fruit is going to be. Then you are performing the highest caliber of action. As he says in verse 1 of chapter 6. What does he say in that? Anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karotiyah. Saha sannyasi. He is a sannyasi who does what he ought to do. Performs his actions, his obligations, his duties. Then what must he give up? Sannyasi means giving up. What must he give up? Anxiety for the fruit of action. Obsession for the fruit of action. All of us are so obsessed with the fruit that we are not performing the action properly, and therefore meet with failure. So that's all that you have to do. From a spiritual standpoint, from the highest standpoint, what you need to do is abhyasa, means sadhana, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga. Whatever sadhana you do, as we saw yesterday, it's so enchanting, so tempting, so fulfilling that you tend to get lost in that. Never forget the purpose for which you are doing it. The purpose is to purify your personality and evolve spiritually to get to the state of realization. So you must always remember the purpose. And then he says, once you divest yourself of the desires, you must meditate. And the last thing that you need to give up is anxiety for the realization itself. anyone who's stuck even with that last one desire doesn't get to realization. Therefore it is that in this lives of saints, it's very interesting. Sant Tukaram was a person who was totally focused on realization, on his Lord. But there was one thing that came in the way, only one attachment he had, the attachment to his own books, to his own compositions. Not because they were his, but because they were compositions for the Lord. And it so happens, see, when you are at that stage, God actually comes and helps. So the Brahmins of the time said, you have no right to compose or write about spirituality. So they go attack him and collect all his books and throw them into the river Indrayani. At that point he realizes. Because that last attachment, that last desire which is standing between him and God goes. And the moment he gives up that attachment, the story goes that the river goddess Indrayani herself took out the books and gave them back to him. So this is it, friends. Live life with a sense of detachment and the world will be at your feet. God will be there to serve you. Today you want the world to serve you. Doesn't happen. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was struggling to reach the state of realization, and his guru Totapuri came and smashed the idol because it was the idol that stood before him and realization. The moment the idol was smashed, he reached realization. So therefore what we learn is, even an experience which is apparently negative, apparently sorrowful, works in our benefit, works for our spiritual growth. So don't look at challenges, don't look at things that go wrong in our lives as impediments. They are only there to help us in our progress towards realization. And if you use it like that, you'll be able to convert challenges into wonderful opportunities. So this is the interpretation of this verse. And now we move on to the most fascinating portion, the last portion in this chapter, which deals with 35 qualities of a Bhakta. 13.